Okay, so in today video we will discuss about where and dynamic keyword in C sharp. So basically where keyword was introduced in C sharp 3.0 while dynamic come later, and then dynamic was introduced in C sharp 4.0. Okay, so this is the history basically where we had in 3.0, and then later dynamic came which was in version 4.0. Then where is used to assign the value whose type is not known at compile time. Typically this is something like if we are working with the entity framework, in that case sometimes we end up with the scenario where we are not sure about the type of data that we are going to receive. In that case we go for the where keyword. So we can assign any type of value inside it, and once the variable is assigned, then the type is decided at compile time. Means whatever the value is going to be assigned in the variable which we have defined using where keyword, then based on the type of value, the type of that variable gets decided at compile time. And then like on contrary to this, dynamic is also used to store the any type of value, but it is decided at a runtime. Okay, so let's flip to the Visual Studio and then we will see like what exactly the meaning of this point is. So I will go with this. Here I have the code written. I will, like I told you, we can store any type of value in var. So I will create a variable. Like if we want to create a variable using var, of course we have to use the var keyword, and then we can say like var data equal to 5. Okay, and now if we hover on the data, you see the type of data got inferred by the compiler that it is int type. Okay, so here whatever the value that we are assigning, based on that value compiler infers, compiler basically concluded the type of data this variable will have. Okay, even though we are defining this using var keyword, but var is not the type of this variable. Instead currently it is integer, and this is inferred using the value we are assigning. So currently if I hover on data, you see it is of type integer type. Likewise if I make it to a string, maybe test. Okay, so now we are assigning the a string type. If we hover on data, you see the type got changed to a string now. Okay, so whatever the type of value that we are going to assign, based on that the actual type of data, the variable of this is going to be decided. So currently the value we are assigning of type a string, that's why data has type a string. Okay, so this is saying where is used to assign the value whose type is not known at compile time. This is like entity framework, but just to make you explain, currently I have taken the type of a string type and I showed you with int type also. Okay, so we can assign any type of value. I showed you integer value as well as a string, and I also showed you like if we were changing the type of data, then how basically the type of data was getting changed. Earlier when I assigned 5, then we were getting the integer type, and when later we changed it to a string, then it was going to be a string type. Okay, so once the variable is assigned, then the type is decided at compile time only based on the value. So currently the value is a string, that's why if I hover on data, so this data has a type, you see, a string. Okay, and if I change it to any number, then it will have int type. Okay, I hope you are clear with this. Then dynamic is also used to store any type of value, and its type is decided at a run time. Okay, so what exactly does it mean? Let me create one variable. If you have to define any variable using dynamic, then we can create the dynamic, we can write the dynamic keyword, and then maybe I can say dynamic data. Okay, dynamic data, this is dynamic variable, and I can say 5. Okay, so unlike data, if I hover, this is when we are writing the code, you can assume this is compile time. Okay, because this time our code is not running. So when I hover on dynamic, you see this dynamic data has a type dynamic itself. Okay, means this time compiler has no idea that what exactly that this variable has the type. If compiler will not infer the type based on the value, this will be decided at runtime. Okay, when we will run the code, that time it will get to know, okay, it has the integer type, so okay, the dynamic data will have integer value, like this. So this will be concluded at runtime, but not now. At compile time it will only show dynamic type. Okay, so this is what basically it is telling. Then var keyword is used to define variable, and once the type is decided at compile time, then other type of value cannot be assigned in it. Okay, what it says, like for example, this is the var type. If I have already assigned, means for variable it is decided at compile time, so data has a variable means a data type decided, and currently what is that, it is a string only. So if now other than a string, if we want to reassign some other value, maybe 5, we will get the error. Compiler will tell, hey, we already have inferred here the type of data variable has data type a string, so why you are assigning some other type, right? If you remember, for example, if we know basically C# is the statically typed programming language. So if we type here int a and then give 10, now wherever we will want to reassign the value, we can only assign integer type only, nothing else, right? Likewise, var gives us flexibility to assign the value, and whatever the value we will assign, based on that value, that time only their data type will be decided, not later point of time. Okay, so in the very same line, the type of this data got decided, that is of type a string type, because we assigned the value a string. So now since their type is decided, it is of a string type, then why we are changing the data type? Now it will only accept the string type, maybe like this, we can give another string or something like this. So this is possible, but another data type, data value, we can't assign. Okay, so this is what basically it is telling. Var keyword is used to define variable, and once the type is decided at compile time, then other type of value cannot be assigned in it. As we saw, like here, the type got decided at compile time, that is of type string, and when we tried giving the value integer, it was not allowing us. Okay, so next it says, however, in dynamic keyword is used to define the variable, and value type can be changed even after its type is decided at runtime. So chances of getting runtime error is more, as compiler don't know about the associated string and methods at compile time. It says this one was not possible with the var, where once you initialize the value with any type, now later onwards you will have to reassign same data type. You can't give another type, like here it is a string, then not you can assign number, but unlike this var, you can do this with var. Okay, so here we have assigned dynamic type with number, means integer type currently, and now at the next time I can assign any other value also in this, whether it's a string, double, float, or whatever. So I can write like this, dynamic data, and we will not get error happily. You see, anyway, whenever we are using the dynamic keyword, we are telling the compiler that, hey, please postpone, please defer concluding the data type of this variable which has declared using dynamic keyword. Okay, so that's why compiler is not worrying about taking type checking at compile time for the variable we have declared using dynamic keyword. And yes, this is a valid syntax. You can write, you can reinitialize the value with any value type. Okay, currently it is integer type, then later we made it a string type, and happily it will accept. Okay, even if I run, I will say console write lines, let's see, I will say data. So of course the type of data here we have overwritten, earlier it was test, later it become another string, so it will print another string here. And the same way, if we write like this, dynamic data, okay, so guess what we will get, the earlier it had 5. Okay, so at runtime this will be int, and then again since we are assigning this, so later it will change to my data. Okay, and then it will print my this data, dynamic data, as well as another string. Let me quickly run and check the output, that what we are getting here. So if we see the output, you see another string as well as dynamic data. So yes, using dynamic keyword, if we are assigning using any variable, then the value we can assign any type of value inside that. Okay, however, suppose here we are saying dynamic data dot length. Let me read this property length. Okay, and this time it will have what, 2 to 4 to 6 7 8 9 10 11 12. So it should print 12, right? So it is printing 12. Let me comment this line. Okay, and now what, see, still compiler will not read this right now, because compiler had no idea what is this. At runtime, when 5 will be initialized to this one, then it will be integer type, and then integer has no what, integer has basically no length property. That's why we will get this error. So compiler will not suggest right now, because compiler has no idea. The type of data actually get decided at runtime. So here we will get error, but you see compile error we are not getting anywhere. Even if I want to run, I can run, but this time 5 is integer type, and of course integer has no length property. So it says int does not contain a definition of length. This is what basically it was telling, that dynamic here keyword is used to define the variable, and value type can be changed even after its type is decided at runtime. So change of getting runtime error is more as compiler don't know about the associated properties and method at compile time. These all gets decided at runtime. That's why you will end up with error if we are not careful while using the dynamic keyword. Okay, so dynamic keyword, everything gets decided at runtime in case of dynamic. Then next we have IntelliSense support is available for var while not for dynamic. IntelliSense is not, but while typing we should get, like here the type of data type of this data variable has already decided, which is nothing of a string, and we know a string has a length property. So as soon as I press here dot, I will automatically start getting, see, all the things associated with a string. For example, if I'm trying to read the length property, you see automatically length is coming here, and I can simply enter and I can read this. But even though when I reassigned the value, and when this line will execute at runtime, by that time the dynamic data variable will have type a string, and then it should have the length. But at compile time you will not get IntelliSense. You see, even if I put dot, no suggestion I am getting, right? So manually I will have to type. So if I am making any mistake, maybe I am writing length like this, it compiler will not complain, and this one we will get error at runtime. So these things we have to be careful while dealing with dynamic keyword. Okay, you have to write everything manually. No IntelliSense support is provided with dynamic. However, we saw that this IntelliSense support is available with var keyword. Okay, then we have initialization is mandatory in case of var while not for dynamic. Okay, so initialization is mandatory actually, like here. Let me remove this. So var data, and suppose I didn't initialize this. Okay, we have already seen that basically whenever we are defining any variable using var keyword, then the type of data that gets decided, whatever the type of data that we are assigning to that variable, based on that the data type of the variable get decided. But if we left it initialized, it will give us error, because compiler will not be able to infer the type of data. That's why even if I hover, you see the error we are getting is implicitly typed variable must be initialized. Okay, so when we initialize, then only compiler will get to know what data type this variable should have. Okay, that's why whenever we are defining any variable using a var keyword, then we must initialize the value. Okay, so like this. But this is not the case with the dynamic, because dynamic, whenever we are defining any variable using dynamic keyword, compiler has nothing to do. Basically we are telling, hey compiler, please bypass the inferring the data type of the variable that we have declared or defined using dynamic. So compiler has nothing to do in that case, and hence if we are even if we are not assigning the dynamic data, this variable, even we are leave it unassigned, still we will not be getting error. But for var we must be initialized. Okay, next we can use the get type method on variable to find the type of variable. So get type, this is obviously we are already aware, like if we want to know the type of data, for example, suppose I want to get the type of this dynamic data, like what type it should have. So I will simply say get type. Okay, and then it will print. Likewise here I can also say data dot get type. You see, here I am getting the IntelliJ support, but here I didn't get, so I had to write. Okay, now can you guess what here we should get? We will get here a string type, and here what we should get. Let's see what we will be getting in the output. Okay, see, both are a string. So as I told you, during compile time, if I hover on this, so it's telling ki its a type is dynamic, but when we told you what is the type of this variable, at runtime even this also was a string, means at runtime when this line executed, then during the time of execution it was decided that okay, this variable also will have data type a string type only. That's why it also printed a string, and this one, obviously this one was decided at compile time only, so this printed a string. Okay, so get type basically we can make use of in order to get the type of the variable we have defined. Next we have is var cannot be used with properties as well as function, return type or input parameter, while dynamic can be used. Okay, it obvious meaning is like suppose let me make one here I will write another class, class employee, and then here I will say prop tab, and then suppose my property name is employee has, so of course it will have the ID, and suppose I want to put var type. Okay, so will it accept? See, compiler is giving error. It says the contextual keyword var may only appear within a local variable declaration or in a script code, but not with properties. Okay, so here var is not sufficient. However, we can make use of dynamic. Okay, and it will work fine. You see, when we wrote the dynamic, it is not giving us error. Likewise, if we say any method, like I will say public static get ID, like this I will say get ID, and then here if we return public static, then return type I have to mention. So suppose I will say int, and then I will say return ID. Okay, here I will return ID. So I am returning the ID, but what error I am getting? I am saying it says ID is not null here. So we can say ID equal to maybe 10. Represent an object. Okay, so ID equal to, let me initialize here itself, and then I can say ID is not an object, reference is required for the non-static field. Okay, I made it a static, and ID is non-static. Okay, so I can make here a static this also. So ID, so we are able to return this value. Let me remove this 10 now. We can initialize. So this way we are writing int instead of int. Can I make it var? Let's see. As soon as I make it var, you see this is the return type of the method. So again I am getting like var may only appear within a local variable declaration or in a script code, but not here. However, I can write here dynamic and it will work fine. Likewise here if I write var number, okay, let me write var, okay, and then I will say number. Okay, now see var again same, we are getting error. However, if we want, we can write dynamic. Okay, and then we can say ID equal to number, and it is working fine. We see, if you want, simply we can write here what we can say console dot write line, we will say get data. So this is the static. We don't need to create object. We can say employee dot get id, and then we can pass here what, 10. So obviously it has accepted the 10. It will initialize the id and it will return the same this number. So here it's not like we are calling the method, it's like you see we are able to make use of dynamic keyword. Okay, if I run, we will be able to see the output 10 successfully, right? So it is working like we can make use of dynamic in properties as well as return type as well as in method input parameters. However, nowhere we saw that var was acceptable, so we cannot make use of var, but we can make use of dynamic. Okay, then it says dynamic type works like system.object only, but unlike object type we don't need to put explicit cast in the dynamic variable. Yes, it is similar like, see, for example, currently as I told you, if we define any variable with a dynamic, then we have to what, we are able to initialize this with any value. Likewise here, suppose I will create one value with this object obj equal to new employee. Okay, and now if we try to print the obj dot let me remove this static keyword because we have already created the object. Okay, and then we will try to access the properties. This line of course will give error. So obj dot get id, get id we should get. So you can see we are not getting the suggestions also here, not intelligence support. But you see here we have created the object of employee and that we are assigning it to the object type. Okay, so when we assign the file, it works successfully, but why it is not working here? And the reason is we need to downcast here. This obj first should get converted into let me get id, let me call this number first. So here we are getting the compile error, but once we convert it like this employee, we will see obj dot let me check the error. Object does not contain a definition for get id and no accessible extension method here. Yeah, so we are getting the error here. The reason is basically eventually we need to downcast it first. Okay, so maybe something like this here. What we can do, simply we can create one employee type object equal to, and then we can assign this to obj. Okay, but still this obj need to downcast first, okay, into employee type. Okay, so we have downcasted this, and then if we try accessing on employee, then we can get. So like this here we will be able to access. So this is the complexity. You saw we were able to initialize this obj with 5, we were able to print, and successfully we can print, but here even we initialize it with the object type, then it was not allowing us to access this directly. Indirectly it is allowing, like this first obj need to be downcasted, explicitly convert it into the employee type, then we are able to access. And now if we run, we should get the id, that is nothing but 6. So here, so like this, we can use. So here same way we could use the dynamic also. If we the problem here is, guys, if we are using the object, in that case we had to downcast. But if we are using the dynamic, we don't worry about to downcast or explicit conversion. Instead directly we can access. Okay, so this is the advantage we have with dynamic. Otherwise, dynamic also behave like object type only. So let me convert it into a dynamic type, dynamic, and then now we don't need to write this. Okay, simply we can say obj, and then now if we run, we can access. So this is the difference, guys. If we are using the dynamic, we don't have to write the explicit conversion. However, with object also it will work, but in that case we have to write the explicit conversion. This is what basically this point was telling. Now the dynamic keyword act as a static type declaration in the C# type system This way C sharp got the dynamic feature and at the same time remained a statically typed language also. We have already awareness that we have two type of programming language, statically typed as well as dynamically typed. So we have dynamically typed language in the sense like before statically typed, if I define in that language, before making use of variable we must be defining the type of that variable, then only we can use. This is the statically, but in dynamic this is not required. We just have the variable data type, even though we don't give still it will work fine. Like we have JavaScript, Python, PHP, these are what, these are dynamically programming language, okay. But C sharp is statically, where you must be telling the type of variable before using it, right, before initializing it. So here with dynamic we are achieving the features that is available in the dynamic, but that is a static type only. What does it mean? We have example here, let's use this, okay. So for example, I will say one thing. Let me tell dynamic obj equal to I will say here we already have this. What was that? Let me take this. Dynamic data equal to 5, okay. So I will use the same thing here also. Dynamic data equal to 5, okay. And now, okay, we have already defined the data here. So in that case, maybe let me take some variable, I will say test maybe, okay. And then here I am defining the var, and I will say test1 equal to test. Now see the confusion, guys. This test is dynamic type, means their value initialization or type, what type it is, that will be decided at runtime. But for test1, compiler has to infer the type, data type now only, right? So how? Because this test is going to be decided at runtime, but this compiler is going to be infer right now only. How it will get? So here in that case, if I hover the test1, you see the test1 has a dynamic type. It means the dynamic is a static type, okay. So see, whenever we are defining any variable using var, it doesn't mean that variable will have var type, okay. But dynamic must have variable, and that will going to be decided at runtime. But before runtime, the type will be dynamic itself, okay. So currently if I hover, the test has variable dynamic. Likewise, if for the var, if I hover on this, it will not say like this has the var type, okay. This will have the value initialized. So to be more precise, var is not a data type. What is var? Var is basically an instruction to the compiler that hey, we are using this with the help of this variable, this keyword, whatever the variable we are defining, please go and infer its type based on the value with which that we have initialized this variable, okay. However, dynamic is a type, okay. If I hover on test, you see that definitely its actual type will be decided at runtime, but before that, you see the type is explicitly showing dynamic type, okay. So this is basically, it is telling like dynamic keyword act as a static type, but var is not a type, it is just like an instruction. So in C sharp, basically var is not a type, but it is just like an instructions, I already told, to the compiler to infer the type of variable. However, dynamic is a static type in a C sharp type system. We saw, even though the dynamic type allows bypassing compile time type check, the compiler still emits the metadata in the compiled code. That includes all the necessary runtime check. This keeps the language within the bound of static typing at the core. It means, guys, we have already told, like if we are using the dynamic variable, then we are bypassing compile time type check. Compiler will not pay attention on that variable, but still the compiled code that will be generated by the compiler will also emit metadata about the variable that we have defined using dynamic keyword, okay. So now, guys, I am not encouraging you to go and frequently start using the dynamic. Here is the actual challenge. If you are used to of you are going to make use of dynamic variable, dynamic keyword frequently, you might end up with performance issue, because the compiler, whatever the compiled code, whatever the metadata that has been generated for the variable of dynamic type, that also will be taken care at the runtime only, along with its actual initialization. So we are, along with the processing, data processing, the further initializations and other stuff that has been generated by the compiled code by compiler at runtime, that is also going to be performed at runtime only. Okay, so additional task is being given by the compiler to the processor. Okay, so processor has to take care of that part also. So because of this, we should avoid using dynamic, and we should not use frequently, but yes, wherever we are not sure, we can go and we can make use of dynamic. Typically dynamic variable, we can use for the com object, or whenever the value that we are receiving from any dynamic languages like Java script is sending any data, we are not sure which type of data that we are going to receive. In that case, we can go with the dynamic keyword, or maybe other Python, right, Perl. So these are the dynamic programming language. So in that case, to deal with the data that we are going to receive from these dynamically typed programming languages, we have dynamic keyword is the best option which is available, and in that circumstances we are allowed and we should use, right? So these are the things that we had for var and dynamic keywords. So that's it for today. Thank you.